Master Ace, cunning linguist. About to get into the seasons. Seasons of hip hop. How we gonna start it? Yeah. As we spring back to the past, it was all.
My name is Noah Callahan-Bever. I'm the editor-in-chief and chief content officer for Complex Media.
Say this man was the greatest fan. When shoelaces were fat and all the rappers' faces were black and light brown. The box with the right sound was all you needed. When it blasts, they must move. You just prove you hard.
I mean, yeah, for me, I knew very early on what I wanted to do. So I started, working at this small magazine called Ego Trip when I was 17. I was still a senior in high school. And so by the time I got to college, I had actually already worked at Vibe as a fact checker during that summer. So yeah, for me, like, I always was extremely clear on what my ambition was, and I really loved, reading magazines growing up, and felt like, it put you in a really interesting place where you got to, be a part of this artistic movement, but also you got to be an artist in your own right because you were creating a creative product. So yeah, I was sort of always drawn to that kind of thing, and for me, it really then just became, how do I earn the stripes as quickly as possible that I need in order to get to that level where I have my own property that I'm overseeing and creating. Because I felt like I have a vision for this stuff, and I think that that vision will resonate with other people. And so yeah, so from there it was like, did a lot of writing while I was in college for XXL, The Source, Vibe, and eventually I ended up dropping out of college, becoming an A&R, working with Dante Ross, who had a label with Loud and Sony, and that was interesting because it allowed me to see the other side of the industry and actually work with artists and be on that side of things, and I learned really quickly that that was not the side for me. Like, I enjoy being the creative, not facilitating the creative from someone else, and and also just realized that, like, the best A&Rs are the ones who know how to recede into the wall and just let the artist do what they do. And I was much more interested in being an active creator. So at that point, a friend of mine, Sasha Jenkins, who had run Ego Trip, he's been one of the owners there, called me up and he was like, hey, are you familiar with Mass Appeal magazine? And I was like, of course. And he was like, Mass Appeal's looking for an editor-in-chief. Are you interested in doing that? So I think I was 22 at the time. I went and ran Mass Appeal. And I did that for about a year before the people at Vibe noticed, what we were doing, and obviously on some level they were a fan of it. And they asked me to be a senior editor at Vibe in 2003. And I did that for about 2 years before Complex called, and I became the number 2 here, and about a year later I was promoted to be the editor-in-chief.
Fast, we glorified coke and smoke and crack in a glass. When B-boys dance to the latest jam, you could say this man was the greatest.
I mean, I think if you deal with youth culture, like, you can't become too sort of stuck in any one thing. Like, culture is constantly evolving, kids are changing, it's always a new generation. You've seen, it's important to have a point of view and to be about something. You can't just sort of be a total interloper and, like, show up and expect to, like, be taken seriously. But you also, you look at, like, certain other magazines and certain other publications who become completely defined by, the genre of the culture that they blew up with. And then, when you do that, you end up becoming someone's older brother's magazine. With Complex, I think that there's an effort on our part to never be content with the product that we're making, to constantly be pushing and to make everything better. But then also not to, as you get older, it becomes easy to, like, look at younger generations and new things and be like, oh, that's not as good as what I remember you know, oh, the College Dropout is cool. It's not Illmatic though.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, for a kid who's 16 today, this is Illmatic. You know, Good Kid, Mad City is Illmatic. And frankly, Illmatic only means to me what it means because I was 14. Like, a 16-year-old today listening to that album might think it sounds super basic. I don't really know. You know, I would hope that they would enjoy it, but like, you have to sort of appreciate that, like, you know, the future always wins. Like, time marches on, and you know, if you want to stay relevant, you have to be able to embrace that change and embrace the fact that things keep moving. So, you know, part of that, like, to do that successfully, you have to know what things to tear away and what things to build on top of, you know? So that's sort of what I was trying to talk about.
Mixing fake plastic hits out past the Raekwon drop all classic discs. Born to roll, so I'm taking.
I mean, it was funny because honestly, like, I was kind of surprised, like, because you know, I've dealt with the dude. I mean, I think I met him the first time at MTV in the summer of 2000. He came up with Jay-Z when they had just done I Just Wanna Love You, and they were debuting it on Direct Effect, and I met him there, and I'm like, yo man, the drums on this shit is crazy. He was like, oh, we got so much more, you know, the Super Thug drums, that's just the beginning for us. I was like, oh, cool, whatever. And you know, over the, whatever, ensuing almost 15 years now, we've met half a dozen times, but never had that much interaction where I would have expected him to say something like that. So, you know, it's totally humbling, and you know, and it's nice, obviously, you know, anytime someone acknowledges the hard work that you put into something, you know, to hear that, and then to hear that from someone who you respect on that level as a creator is also, you know, sort of doubly so. But yeah, so I mean, you know, that was a very dope moment. I mean, you know, I think that what it is just like, we have a process, and you know, once you can figure out how to create like something that's great, and it's not like a flash in the pan, or it's not an accident, and you understand the methodology behind it, then you can repeat that. And so, you know, for us, it really was, you know, in 2007, 2008, when we really started shifting our attention to the internet, it was like, for me, you know, I enjoyed it because it's tough. When you make a magazine, you have very little data, and there's very little, like, feedback. You don't get that many letters, and, you know, sales are basically dependent on who's on the cover, not necessarily what's in the magazine. So, you know, as soon as we got to the internet, it was like you had this enormous amount of data and feedback based on like what people like, and you could see like, oh, like not only could you see what people like, but you could see why certain things worked, where did it get linked, who, you know what I mean, who put a spotlight on this. And you know, over those, like, I'd say 2 to 3 years, you know, to like 2010, the beginning of 2011, like, we really refined exactly how we do things to, you know, maximize all the efficiencies and to get the most out of our efforts. And, you know, once you have that process in place, you can then look at like food or EDM or, you know, men's fashion or whatever, and you can be like, okay, let's make 4-pins, let's make First We Feast, let's make Do Androids Dance, and know that you're going to be effective because, you know, fundamentally, you know, you have a like solid foundation for it.
Fuck the commercial tracks you doing. A brother gotta eat. Jam, won't you rap for food then?
You know, I mean, I think probably still the best was going to Hawaii. You know, with Kanye while he was working on Twisted Fantasy. You know, it was just, first of all, Hawaii is amazing. Second of all, Kanye was making like some of the best music, you know, in the last, I don't know, ever. And then on top of it, you just look at the cast of characters. And, you know, I grew up, you know, as a kid, super into hip hop and super into A Tribe Called Quest and Nas and Mobb Deep and all this stuff. And it's like, you know, Wu-Tang, and like, you know, to wake up one morning and be at a breakfast table with the RZA and Pusha T and Q-Tip and Kanye and Consequence sitting there talking about, you know, new music coming out and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it was just, you know, I mean, it's like literally like some dream scenario stuff. And then, you know, and then on top of it, just to really get so immersed in it where I got to spend like a week, you know, watching the process and just kind of being a fly on the wall. And you know, it was cool too, because it was like, I wasn't there under the auspices of it being a story necessarily. It was more just kind of like, you know, Kanye was like, look, I want to get all the creative people that I know into this room and just sort of get a vibe going and see what's going on here. And I was like, well, you know, is this for a story? And he was like, no, I mean, look, if you want to take notes just for whatever, maybe down the line, that's fine. But really, it's just about, you know, getting the right people there and having the right conversations. Like, and I want, you know, you and the RZA to talk about music, and me and Q-Tip to talk about like how he EQ'd the Tribe albums, and you know what I mean, like that kind of thing. And yeah, so I mean that was just like literally some once in a lifetime type of shit. I mean, you know, there has been a decrease in all magazine sales pretty much since 2006, 2007, and particularly after the crash of 08. You know, for us, we never really, like, the magazine was always, you know, subscription based, so we haven't seen that much of a dip. Like, the sales was always, you know, some magazines are like, you know, Us Weekly is like all newsstand and like a little bit of subs. We were like 95% subs and 5% newsstand. So in that sense, it hasn't been like that. You know, in terms of the efforts of the guys, you know, out there, it's definitely come down. It's, you know, deprioritized just because, you know, when you can make a product that is touching people every single day, you know, there's a lot more opportunity to get your stories off and to like tell the things, you know, tell the stories that you want to tell. But we still take a great amount of pride, you know, and I still have the magazine covers up. And, you know, and I think that, I like to think that, like, in the same way when I was 16 and I was putting up, you know, Source covers and Rap Pages covers and Ego Trip covers on my wall, you know, hopefully there's a new generation of 16, 17-year-olds that are doing the same thing with the stuff that we're creating. That's, I mean, you know, ultimate decision is pretty much me. You know, I'm always trying to put the, you know, the right person at the right time, and timing is very sort of key to that. Yeah, and you know, I think it's like, it's about having the right person with the biggest project, but it's also about having the person that I think is the most on brand for what we're doing. And that's why, you know, like, we put Chance the Rapper on the cover. You know, an unsigned rapper has never been on the cover of a national magazine before. But when I looked at the movement and the energy behind what Chance was doing, as well as the quality, and it just felt like this guy is what the future of this whole, like, scene is about. More than, you know, you could look at someone like a Big Sean, who is a totally dope rapper, has made good records, is on the radio with R&B singles, you know, but it feels like, to me, what he's doing is great, but part of what used to be, you know what I mean? And, you know, Sean could totally end up getting a cover of Complex at some point, but in that moment, it felt to me like Chance would be the most exciting thing that we could do. So yeah, so I mean, that, you know, so that's kind of what it is. It really just comes down to, like, what is going to be the thing that I think people are going to talk about, hopefully in a positive way, the most. We can expect a lot more and a lot better, and, you know, I think one of the big things we're gonna, you know, be working on is video. We sort of got our feet wet this year with things like the Combat Jack show and Magnum Opus and stuff. you know, video is going to be absolutely crucial. I don't know if you've seen on the site recently, but the Complex News, we definitely plan on blowing that out as like a real department and having, you know, multiple news videos on the site per day, you know, and really opening up the brand, hopefully to a broader and new audience, because I do believe that there are, you know, text as the only means of storytelling is somewhat limited, and I think that if we do what we do and tell the stories that we tell successfully anyway, but we can tell them in a different medium, there's going to be a whole new set of people that will consume what we're making. So that's really the biggest thing. And then, you know, yeah, more stories, more editors, you know, more content, and, you know, yeah, I'm sure we'll make some more. You know, we acquired Soul Collector this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we made another acquisition of some, you know, sort of large, smaller brand. I'm not exactly sure, you know, what that would be quite yet, but, you know, I know that we're looking around.
5 minutes sitting, staring, and you no longer free. 40% of Americans own a cell phone, so they can hear everything that you say when you ain't home. I guess Michael Jackson was right. You are not alone. Rock your hard hat black as you in the terror dome, full of hard niggas, large niggas, dice tumblers, young teens in prison greens facing life numbers, crack mothers, crack babies, and AIDS patients. Young bloods can't spell, but they can rock you a PlayStation. Snoop Mav is whipping motherfuckers' ass. You wanna know how to rhyme? You better learn how to add. It's mathematics.
2. It's Master Ace, Cunning Linguist. About to get into the seasons. Seasons of hip hop. How we gonna start it? Yeah. As we spring back to the past, it was all.
My name is Noah Callahan-Bever. I'm the editor-in-chief and chief content officer for Complex Media.
Say this man was the greatest fan.
You got to, you know, be an artist in your own right because you were creating a creative product. So yeah, you know, I was sort of always drawn to that kind of thing, and for me, it really then just became, how do I earn the stripes as quickly as possible that I need in order to, you know, get to that level where I have my own property that I'm overseeing and, you know, creating. Because, you know, I felt like I have a video as a fact checker during that summer. So yeah, you know, for me, like, I always was extremely clear on what my ambition was, and I really loved, you know, reading magazines growing up, and felt like, you know, it put you in a really interesting place where you got to, you know, be a part of this artistic movement, but also
when shoelaces were fat and all the rappers' faces were black and light brown, a box with the right sound was all you needed. When it blasts, they must move. You just prove you hard.
I mean, yeah, for me, you know, I knew very early on what I wanted to do, so I started, you know, working at this small magazine called Ego Trip when I was 17. I was still a senior in high school, and so by the time I got to college, I had actually already worked at Vibe, vision for this stuff, and I think that that vision will resonate with other people. And so yeah, so from there it was like, you know, did a lot of writing while I was in college for XXL, The Source, Vibe, and, you know, eventually I ended up dropping out of college, becoming an A&R, working with Dante Ross, who had a label with